Hi there, everybody. I'm Fred Thomas, and you are watching All Things Bike. And today we are speaking with Tim Mitchell, the Executive Director and founder of the CCB Cycling Education Foundation and the team manager of CCB Foundation CCB Racing Team. Tim, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks very much, Fred.
Anytime. Well, tell us a little bit about your background in cycling. Anyone who's been racing in New England will know, but give us your view.
So I got started pretty late with competitive cycling. I mean, I always rode, but my real athletic background is in alpine ski racing. I did that pretty seriously through college and for a few years after college, and kind of injuries eventually sort of took me out of that. Went to grad school and ended up getting a job as the head alpine ski coach at Harvard University. And during my first year coaching there that spring, one of my friends, I was talking to him, say, hey, what are you up to this weekend? And he said, oh, I'm actually going to this bike race. And so I kind of looked over in the corner and I saw my road bike, which I hadn't ridden in about a year and a half, and said, hey, maybe I'll go with you. Yeah, just totally on a whim. And quite literally, it was a windy, cold criterium at Ninigrit, which is pretty much how most crits at Ninigrit are. And didn't do anything special in the race. It was Cat 5, 1-day license, and by the end of that, I was totally hooked.
Tim Mitchell is a Cat 5. I just can't believe it. But anyway, we all start somewhere.
So. I got into it, pretty seriously, pretty quickly. Went up through the ranks, fairly fast. Took about just under 2 years to get up to Cat 1 and stuff. I gravitated towards time trialing. It sort of fit my meticulous nature. That's probably a nice way of putting it. And was lucky enough to get on the CCB Club racing team, which is based out of Boston, kind of North Shore area. It's been around since the mid '70s when some members of the club emigrated to the U.S. from England. And it's probably one of the, if not the longest, continually running elite level or higher race program in the country. Had great mentors on that program and everything, and it got to a point where I was sort of like, all right, well, I'm probably not getting any better, and maybe I should be giving something back here. And that sort of coincided with the time when there were a lot of U23 teams that were folding. Kind of noticed that maybe there was something that we could do, because there weren't a lot of options for U23s, especially in the New England area. So I sort of saw, hey, I'm coaching skiing at Harvard, and that's essentially U23 age group. So I sort of realized that, well, hey, I've been developing athletes at the U23 level for a long time, albeit in another sport. And, I was getting a lot out of cycling personally, so I thought that, hey, maybe I could do something for, for the U23s in the region. And so we started to kind of just very gradually at a grassroots level sort of stepped up that part of the program. And, we had 1 or 2 good juniors and U23s sort of come through the program while I was still seriously racing.
Yeah, I remember that.
And so it sort of was a nice kind of segue into doing that.
Tell us a little bit more about the mission of the foundation and its connection to education.
One of the kids that was a junior in the CCB program, coming up through Chad Young, who probably a lot of people watching this will probably be familiar with who Chad is. He raced with us, went from the time he was about 15 years old or so, and then his final year as a junior, he raced for the Hot Tubes team, which is one of the best junior programs around. And unfortunately, at the end of that year, a lot of the guys from the Hot Tubes team get kind of picked up by, either Axel Merckx's team or, one of the other pro teams or continental teams in the U.S. And Chad, unfortunately, it didn't work out for Chad right away, and part of that had to do with the fact that he was going to Colorado School of Mines, which is obviously an exceptionally challenging academic program. He's really into engineering and math, and he was very serious about that, and he sort of was, lamenting that there maybe, wasn't a program out there that, that was, really understood that balance. And, with my background coaching at Harvard, I mean, that's really all about the academic and athletic balance. If you're a student athlete there. So, I said to Chad, hey, I'll do you one better. Instead of, saying, hey, it would be great that there's a program out there that understood that. I said, how about we require it.
Right.
And so, that really just started off with a phone call, from Chad, when he was like, hey, can I come back and ride next year? And, and we sort of started talking about that it was a shame that there wasn't really a more direct link between academics and cycling. I mean, there is collegiate cycling, but that's really only part of the year. You can't really rely on that as the sole development tool. There needs to be something else, another layer in there.
Right.
So, I tried to fill a gap that was there, and Chad was sort of the inspiration for doing that. So the first year, like I said, we had 4 riders. We had Chad Young, Curtis White, Corey Small, and Kai Wiggins.
See, I mean, I remember trying to keep up with all these guys.
Yeah, me too.
And giving up.
Yeah, me too. And that was honestly one of the most fantastic years, just to see the progress that those guys made. Having them do well in a race was way more rewarding than any result that I ever got on my own, winning this, that, or whatever, because you could see the progress race to race, and not even just the skill acquisition within racing itself, but just in terms of how they managed themselves, whether it was what time they showed up, how they prepared, balancing workload and training load and
confidence.
Confidence, exactly. And, just sort of like interpersonal relations, and just watching them develop on, so many different levels, became exceptionally rewarding.
These guys, they raced all over. I mean, and not all over the country, all over the world too. Give us a sense of where these races are and what they're like, because I mean they're tough. I mean, some of these races they're going to are the real deal.
Yeah, they are. Racing domestically is certainly fine. It's challenging. There's no knock on the physical level of those races. But again, if you're looking at the concept of education through athletics, which is something that we really harp on quite a bit, traveling to, different areas of the country, but, even more importantly, different areas of the world, you learn about those areas, those countries, those regions, the culture, the people that are there. Plus, at a lot of those races, because they are bigger UCI professional level races, there's teams from, even more areas of the world there. So it's like this cultural melting pot. And so it becomes the race becomes an educational experience unto itself. It's sort of this like little traveling, social studies experiment. And, you're going places where these kids might not otherwise ever go. So for example, Tour of Azerbaijan.
Absolutely.
I mean, anybody can book a plane ticket to go to Azerbaijan, but who's ever going to have a reason to go there? And who's ever going to, go anywhere other than the capital city, where, the race that we did there, rode deep into, the mountains in Azerbaijan. And exactly. And, same thing, with China. We did Tour of Qinghai Lake, which is up in the highlands, in central China.
Wow.
And, up on the Tibetan plateau, and there's the chance that you're going to go there just because is really slim. And so the ability to help these kids kind of grow and broaden the experiences that they might not otherwise have, was just was really awesome. And being able to tie that into elite level athletics and, and on the platform of a 501c3 nonprofit. It just sort of all the pieces just came together quite nicely.
And it's really significant that for these guys to race at that level, it takes a lot of training, a lot of preparation, a lot of work. but they're not giving up on school, right? I mean, you still have to be in school to be on the team. What kind of programs are the riders in?
Yeah, so I mean, we have really riders sort of studying every kind of academic pursuit you can think of. Good example is someone like Kai Wiggins, who went to Middlebury College and graduated from there and had an option to ride professionally, but was very much into what he was doing academically, and worked an internship at the Arab American Institute in Washington, D.C., which turned into a full-time job there, and now he's doing a ton of research and policy writing for them, and actually doing something that's really making a difference. And you've got Corey Small working for an environmental firm in Boston, and as we talked about, Chad was, pursuing his degree in engineering from, School of Mines, and you've got Curtis White, who's finishing up his degree at Union College while not only racing road full time, but also racing cyclocross at an incredibly high level. And yesterday he just won the Pan Am cyclocross championships at the elite level, which is bonkers, which is crazy, and couldn't be happier.
And he didn't have to give up school to do that. And so
exactly.
That's that seems to be the trap that maybe the previous generation of cyclists had to.
I think it's important to sort of note that it's like I don't think it's really the fault of any of the teams or anything in the U.S. It's just if you look at the schedule of races, they're very heavy very early in the year and very West Coast. We look at the times where the academic load is lowest, and so we're looking at maybe doing a few select events in the spring.
Right.
But then college exams usually finish up beginning of May rather.
Yep.
And so we're racing pretty heavily. Using May to kind of build up. June is usually a focus for us. And we'll have, sort of a lighter month in July for everybody to recover. And then, again, another big push in August. When you have a really serious academic load, you just go, okay, well, these are the times that I can be serious about racing, and you go find the races.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's great that they can balance it, but it's a lot because of you, because you're doing a lot of the heavy lifting. And so, give us a sense of just how much work is involved as a team manager to get how many kids, how many guys are 9 to?
Yeah, we have 9 U23 riders
to get them in a van, get them on a plane with bikes and clothing and all that. What's that like?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to Europe, you're looking obviously at 1 bike per rider, and then usually plus 2 spare bikes. Depending on where we're going over there, we might have bikes already organized as spares over there.
Right.
And then you're looking at obviously 1 set of race wheels per bike, and then probably 3-4 sets of spare wheels. And then one of the best parts about racing in Asia is that a lot of the races, they actually take care of a lot of the logistics for you. Basically,
right.
You tell them when you're flying. They tell you, hey, this is the airport you arrive at, and arrive between, on this date, between this time and this time.
We'll pick you up,
and we'll take care of everything else. And so that's honestly one of the reasons that we do so much racing over there. Is that of course the cultural experience is just out of this world.
Sure.
But they really do a good job of putting on a good show. There's a huge number of spectators. Honestly, more than we've seen in any other race that we've done anywhere else. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people over the course of like Tour of Poyang Lake, which is an 11-day stage race. It's absolutely bonkers.
Why is that? And why do you think that is? I mean,
I think it's the novelty because we're not just in a city like Beijing, which is very westernized. I mean, there's a huge Western influence in Beijing. But if you go inland in China to some of the other what they would call smaller cities, which are massive
still huge
for us,
10 million people.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? Is that it's the biggest show in town, that's rolled through all year, and everybody wants a piece of it.
We've heard about some of the rewards. Have there been what are the sort of the immediate challenges of running the team? And
like any team, budget is always a challenge. We're a nonprofit organization, so we run real lean on. We have a lot of people volunteering their time to help out, and we run on a budget that is exceptionally small. I mean, I do this, it's a labor of love. I realize that I got a lot in my life out of my ability to balance, ski racing and college. And then, I felt like, okay, I need to give something back here. And I quickly realized that the best way to do that was to sort of bring attention to the cause of education through athletics and balancing, the bike and school in a way that really no team had ever tried to do. One of the reasons, honestly, to go to Europe is that once you're there, the cost of participation in the sport in Europe is actually far lower. A regular kermesse, €5.
Right, yeah, exactly.
It's €5. If you base yourself in Ghent, Belgium, you can ride to a race probably 4 or 5 days a week that's within 30 kilometers of where you are. So you don't even need a car. There's sort of the expectation that, if I'm a good rider, if I don't win or podium or this sense of
results.
It's result driven or whatever. But over there, you go into the situation knowing that there are a ton of riders that are better than you, and so you open yourself up to try new and different things and risk. Go on the attack, knowing that if you get dropped, it's okay. There's a lot of really good riders who are getting dropped, so you're sort of not afraid to fail.
Well, tell us about the work that the team does with Best Buddies.
Sure, it's a charity that's near and dear to my heart. Like I said, for a number of reasons, it benefits people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. One of the sort of higher ups within the organization, who's in charge of the Best Buddies cycling experience. They do, bike riding. The charity rides are a huge part of their fundraising activities. There's Richard Fries, who's New England cycling legend, announcer, promoter. The voice of New England cycling. And Richard and I have known each other for a long time, and I sort of approached him and said, hey, I'd like to get the kids in the program involved in some form of charity that involves the bike, so that they kind of have that understanding that there's stuff out there bigger than them and more important than how fast you get from point A to point B on the bike.
Right.
And so Best Buddies fit in great with that. They do the ride from Boston to Hyannisport.
Yep.
And we'll have some of our guys go. Richard organizes training rides for some of the less experienced riders who have, riding 100 miles is a big ask if you don't ride all the time.
Absolutely.
And so he runs training rides throughout the spring leading up to the ride in June. And we'll go on that and sort of help teach people little skills that we take for granted because we spend our lives on the bike. And again, you talk about like the aha moment, and sort of riding with these people and seeing them when stuff clicks is it's really rewarding, not just for myself but for the rest of the riders, and all of them unanimously. They all say when they do it, it's one of their best days on the bike. Riding from Boston to Hyannisport, because it's not this sense of urgency of getting from point A to point B as fast as you can. It's about the interactions and sort of the underlying purpose.
How do riders join the team?
Every year, sort of the number of spots we have open is a little bit different. As we go on, I am trying to focus more and more on riders from the Northeast, because as we talked about earlier, there's sort of less sort of organic opportunities for those riders in the region to mix it up with the best riders in the country and the world. So I tend to keep my ear to the ground pretty well throughout the year and kind of see who's coming up through. And I've sort of got my eye, 2 years down the road, who's coming up through juniors. The other thing too that we do is we actually look for people that got a late start. There's not like any one particular way. We still have a strong local presence. So, it's really just come up and introduce yourself to the riders on the team. We're in a very distinctive, pink and blue kit that hasn't changed in a long time. So it's finding us is not hard.
So it's really it's a question of just reaching out and racing and being in touch and saying hi every now and then.
We really want it to be accessible. I think with a lot of pro teams, like there is that sort of barrier to entry where it's like you don't even know what the first step is. And that's one of the reasons that even though the last 2 years at the pro level, we've been at some local races, we're actually kind of refocusing on that even more. We're certainly not giving up racing at the UCI level or anything like that, but we're sort of refocusing, using more of the local races as sort of development workplace to sort of develop team chemistry, stuff like that. So people will probably see us even more in 2019 at local races than they have the previous 2 seasons. So
great.
Like I said, I sort of want it to be that dangling carrot where you've got juniors coming up through and they just don't see a clear development pathway to get to the next level, and hopefully CCB can be that thing, and the more they're around us and we're around them, it's just an easy and casual conversation, and there's not that kind of hesitancy. I don't know, it's just if it's
there's more accessibility.
Yeah, if it's just the guy that you're bumping elbows with and racing on a normal racing with on a normal basis. It's like I said, we want it to be accessible and just kind of normal, like kind of remove those barriers.
Tell us about 2019, the roster, what the plans are, the goal events.
Yeah, so we'll be carrying again 8 or 9 U23s, predominantly from the Northeast. We're making gravel a big part of what we're doing. Gravel racing is like you go to gravel worlds, and it's like you're going to smash for 150 miles, almost 10,000 feet of climbing, 7+ hours, and you're going to be pedaling for the vast majority.
Heavier bike and wider tires, no place
exactly.
to hide.
And I think the important thing is that it also gives the U23 riders on the team a chance to sort of interact with a lot more of the cycling general public, because these events are mass mass start, mass participation.
Right.
So you're riding in and amongst riders of all abilities.
That's right. There's no category.
It's a much more collegial atmosphere. And look, there's a time and a place to be very serious and focused about it. And this is in no way taking the place of road racing because, I mean, let's be honest, cyclocross doesn't exist if it's not for road racing. It got its start as an off-season training for road racing. Gravel racing springs out of road racing. So, road race is the fountain from which everything else springs. And so, this is sort of all additive to that. And but like I said, I think there's plenty of reasons to do it. It's fun. It's great for the industry right now, and getting more people involved in the sport. And so if we can play a part in that, then that's fantastic.
Well, thanks so much for coming down and giving us this great overview. It's fantastic.
Thanks very much, Fred. I appreciate it.
All right, everybody. That was Tim Mitchell, the Executive Director and founder of the CCB Cycling Education Foundation. You can learn more about CCB Cycling at their website and also on Facebook. That's all we got time for right now. Thanks so much for watching. We will talk to you again soon.
All Things Bike is brought to you by FitWorks, rider-first bike fitting, rider-matched bike sales. Locations in Peabody, Massachusetts, Waitsfield, Vermont, and Ridgefield Park, New Jersey. And Frame and Wheel, eBay selling services for cyclists, bike shops, and bicycle companies. Time, space, cash. Pick 3. And AD Bikes, the modern face of Austro-Daimler cycling and the bike company of the future.